Yes, I am talking about the complexities of relationships and how we can also maybe make our relationships just a little bit easier. But I will say that one of the reasons relationships are complex is because we compare them to other relationships, right? So if we're in a relationship with somebody and we're scrolling and say we're having a tough season with our significant other, and now you're seeing your girlfriend with her new boo, and they hugged up and kissed up and all these other things, so now you're frustrated. So I think a lot of it comes down to overexposure with social media, because now you're comparing your relationship to everybody, even on a subconscious level. You might not intentionally plan on doing that, but you're constantly seeing this with different friends and different girlfriends, and you only wonder why you don't have those things, or why you're maybe in a difficult season right now. So relationships can be complex because we're always comparing, opposed to just focusing on what we have and being content with the life that we live. Are you tired of dating the same person, just different faces? Are you tired of people wasting your time in this whole dating process? Do you desire to marry one day? I created this 5-part video series entitled Dating Intentionally: 5 Ways to Know They Are the One for You. You can get it now in the comment section below. You will see it is the number 5 ways to know podia.com. I created this 5-part video series with you in mind. Now let's get back into today's podcast episode, because we're comparing our relationship to this one person snapshot that they sent on social media. You have no idea what goes on when the camera is off, right? And then we compare our relationship again to these anomalies. uh my relationship, my marriage, is somewhat of an anomaly. I met my wife, some of you know my story. I was married 14 years, went through a divorce, went and I met my wife on Instagram. We married 6 months later. We were dating long distance. I ended up relocating and moving, to Texas. My relationship dynamic is somewhat of an anomaly. And there's other cases out here like that too, but there's no way I'm going to just automatically tell somebody, your story should be like mine's, because we had to go through certain challenges too before, we said I do. There were some things that we had to deal with that it's not for everybody. Some of these things can make or break relationships. So remember, no relationship is cookie cutter. Um, they can be similar, but here's another thing that complicates relationships is you don't know what happened to them as a child, right? Sometimes they won't tell you some of their deepest, darkest secrets about what happened to them as a child, because a lot of stuff stems back to your childhood and the way you behave the way you do, right? So if you're dating someone, you say you're talking to them for about 3 months, and they're not just going to give you their whole life history during this time. You might be crazy about this person, but there are some things that they might be afraid to tell you that's causing them to behave the way they are. And this comes with time and seasoning. This comes with accepting a person for who they are, right? Like if they disclose these things to you, are you going to stay, or are you going to go? It might be too much for you. Who knows? And you have that right to leave the relationship if it's too much for you to handle. And I think that's why it's important to have those conversations a little bit later on and getting to know someone, and not really saying everything in its infancy stages, because you're just trying to get to know someone. But again, understanding their backstory can complicate the relationship if you're not on that level yet. Now, there are 2 things that I think that really stands out when it comes to complicating relationships. And of course, I talked about the childhood, but let's talk about the family of origin and the upbringing, right? And I talked about this in a previous video before about childhood order. Are they the oldest? Are they the youngest? These different things, they play into who this person that you plan on being with. Older people, the firstborn, have a tendency to be a little more mature, right? If you the last one, you're kind of the baby, so you kind of just expect everything to go your way. Again, this isn't everybody, but I'm just saying that these things play a factor. So you talk about family of origin and upbringing. Maybe they weren't taught to clean their room. Maybe they had a mom who cleaned up behind them all the time. Maybe he was a mama's boy. Maybe mama just did everything for him because she didn't have time to teach him. That stuff plays into his adulthood. And now you're wondering why you with him at 34 years old, why he's not even picking up his socks behind himself, is because mom never did it. Right. So, but these are the conversations that you got to have. So that makes relationships complicated. Maybe they were never taught to clean up behind themselves or clean dishes, all those different things. So when you both come under this one roof, y'all clash because you're bringing your world and they're bringing their world under one roof. So that makes relationships complicated. Let's talk about even parenting. If you have a child and maybe the person that you with were heavily disciplined as a kid, now that they have kids, they might not be a big fan of discipline because they know what that felt like growing up, right? You might be a fan of discipline. So again, this is where the relationship clash, and it's important that you have this kind of conversation because it can destroy a relationship. Now, this is the second one that I believe that makes relationships complicated is we are all unique with different experiences before meeting our spouse and significant other. They had a whole life before they met you. Maybe they were, the life of the party in college and they was doing the most, or, maybe you grew up and you was just kind of more of a independent hard worker, where nobody really gave you anything. You always worked for things. So those kind of different things, they play into each other when you come into a relationship because the way they see things and the way you see things are totally different. The beauty of a relationship is when the both of you can actually look outside of yourself. And this is why I think empathy is a great trait to have regardless of whoever you're with, because people who are empathetic, they can see outside of themselves and they can think of you opposed to just getting things done their way in the way they want it done all the time, right? So I think empathy is a great trait to have, but that's why it's important that you both take the time to have the necessary conversations about how you feel and how are we as a collective going to walk away where both of us are happy. And then even sometimes somebody might have to be sacrificial, right? For the betterment of the relationship. So if everything is about you and you're always winning, believe me, the other person you're with, they lose because everything is always about you and you getting your way. So this is why relationships are complicated, because we have to think of that other person and accept the way that they think. Like you can't change people's minds in a way that they been living their life, and the way they experience life might have worked for them and it might not have worked for you. So experiences plays a big part into why relationships can be complex, right? So let me end with this. Remember, the decision that you make affects both of you, right? So I think this is where the communication piece is important, and that we come to a mutual agreement about some certain things, because if we have a mutual agreement, then that way we are both agreeing to walk in the same direction. There's a scripture that says, how can two walk together unless they agree? So I think that's another trait that you can have, like being agreeable, somebody who's willing to work with you as well. I think that's a awesome trait to have as well. So there's a lot of different areas you can go in this as far as why relationships are complex, but I know I said a lot, but I think that these are key points that's really worth looking into if you plan on having a healthy relationship, because putting your relationship on autopilot can really wreak havoc on your relationship. You have to be intentional about it every day. Let me know what you think. Why do you think relationships are complex?